Thank you, Kathy. Ken Kamholtz from Western New York will speak now.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to these ladies for the bravery that it takes them to talk about this highly emotional, disturbing, and sensitive issue with their loved one. I'd like to thank the senators and assemblymen for their help and their support in this matter. It's a great cause and something that really needs to be upheld, and I appreciate all of the work that you folks have done. My story is a little bit different. I'm a police officer of 18 and a half years with a Central New York Sheriff's Department. And I retired from the National Guard, 20 years of service, Desert Storm, Enduring Freedom, No Legal, 9/11. I've been under many management styles and many management types. I actually was a manager. I retired as a Master Sergeant with the 107th Security Police Forces in Niagara Falls, which served our state greatly during all of these last wars. I've been a police officer, like I said, for 18 and a half years. In 2003, when I was released from active duty, I was promoted to the rank of investigator. I was in charge of the drugs and alcohol investigations of my small police department. We had 19 deputies, I believe, and 4 investigators. I was the new guy in the office, the new guy in the room. I was excited. I wanted to get out there on the streets. I wanted to start making a difference. I entered a world that was completely different from working the road. The subculture was different. The norms are different, other than the policies that are established by the county. You enter into a different world. There's one individual there who was the senior investigator. He took exception to my enthusiasm, as I later learned. And probably 2004, about 6 months after I started investigations, I was really making some headway with some good arrests. A pedophile had identified himself. His guilt had overcome him. He stepped forward and gave a full confession, but we didn't have any corroborating evidence. I called the senior investigator to assist me on it. Being new to the investigations, I wanted help. We identified 3 victims. I was only able to corroborate evidence for 1 victim, and I wrote that in my report. I was ordered to remove that from my report in violation of Brady law, which says that you have to disclose information that is exculpatory, could tend to show that the person was innocent. Even though we still had a full confession and he came forward himself, it's still my duty to uphold righteousness and to be the arm of the law to do what's right. He ordered me, he belittled me. I was the only one in the office, and I refused to do it. I refused to do it to this day. From that point on, in 2004, there was a series of, you think of the domestic violence stuff, you think of what these ladies were talking about with their friends, the undermining of my work product. In any case you do a step-by-step analysis, and information comes piecemeal. At the end of it, you can look back and say, well, maybe I should have done that. But he was doing that and exploiting that as error, incompetence. After 3 years of that, from 1984, 83 to 86, he was a colleague. He wasn't really my supervisor. He was just a very experienced veteran of the department, very knowledgeable, and somebody that you'd really want to learn from and could learn from. In 2006, he became my supervisor. There was information developed that there was a serious incident with a person that we had to keep an eye on, that if we got called there, that could possibly be violent. It was drug-related, so I should have been contacted. I had just been to this residence the day before, and the day before that was when the email was sent, and told that this guy is a potential threat of physical violence, has guns. I was never given that email by this fellow, this guy. He kept me off the email list. Everybody else in the department got it, but the drug and alcohol guy, whose job it is to go to these places. I brought that to the attention of the administration, and then even through those 3 years, his behavior wasn't noticed just by me, it was by other folks in the investigation division. We had several meetings with the sheriff, the undersheriff, other folks that had stuff, had things involved in it, and we tried to mediate, but it just ended up being, that's just his personality, that's a personality conflict, you have different values, that's just the way he comes across, and he doesn't really know that. Ridiculous stuff. Now, like I said, I was in the service for 20 years. I've had many managers, and then in the service you got many managers. I've been a police officer for 18 and a half years, then it was 15 years. You got many authority figures that you have to adapt to their style of leadership. their style of management. This was not a personality conflict between him and I. I know how to deal with different styles, and I know how to be a servant under the authority appointed over me. He came out with a memo that said that he's a control guy. He wants to have everything go through him. I was ordered to call him at home, even if he was off duty, about every one of my cases that he wanted to go through and see, make sure I was doing it right. Over micromanagement, he came out with an order that said we had to call him or go through him before we talked to the district attorney about some of our cases. And we're talking about felony rape, felony child abuse, attempted murders. We got to call him first while we're out in an investigation before we call the DA to find out, where's some of the legalities here. So just so he can, manage it. Not that he can't be just advised. He wants to go through it, and then he'll come out or not come out or whatever he does. But it was infringing upon my ability to perform an investigation. The stress started building up, and he also instituted a policy that we would meet with the district attorney once a month and discuss our cases. Now, mind you, we have this policy that says we're not allowed to discuss anything with the district attorney unless we go through him. Now we have this office thing where we got to meet together on a monthly basis with everybody in CID and the district attorney and the assistant district attorney. At the end of that meeting, we went through our agenda. The district attorney looked at me, former district attorney, and she looked me right in the eyes and she says, "Do you have any questions you'd like to ask or any cases that you want to talk about?" By that time, I'll call him the bully, had stood up and gotten behind me. And I said, "Well, yes, I'd like to talk about," and immediately he struck me in the back of the neck. When I was in the service, I had a service-connected injury in my 5th and 6th vertebrae. He struck me right on that, and because of the stress from the previous years, the PTSD or whatever, which I had no idea what all of that was. It was just a mess, mentally and physically. But I didn't realize it either, like these folks. We didn't know what it was. I didn't black out, but I have no memory from the time when I got struck, other than the pain, to the time I got out of the office when, like, somebody turned the light switch on. And so I'm like just going along, like, what in the heck was that? What happened? I had gone on my way, and there was a rape investigation I was working on, so I went out and did that. I didn't know to report it at that time. I mean, I'm thinking, oh, geez, it's the domestic violence thing. Do you report it, make it worse? I got caught in the family domestic violence cycle of abuse. You don't mention, you just compensate. The next day, or next night, my wife Cindy here, I talked to her, and she basically told me to make a report, which I did. I filed a workers' compensation claim report. This is a veteran's injury. The Veterans Department will take care of it. Social or workers' comp had nothing to do with it, but it was also an order of our general policy. We had to fill it out. But there wasn't anything I was going to do with that. And then I filed a personnel complaint. The next day after the personnel complaint, I was grounded to my desk. I had to ask permission to go to the bathroom. I had to ask permission to go home for lunch, and I wasn't allowed to answer any phones. I had to do just whatever work they put before me, which was nothing. My desk was clean. I did end up solving a burglary through the internet, which was really cool because it ticked him off really bad. I don't mean to be so abrasive, but you get those little pleasures, but because he sends me out into nowhere land and I can solve a burglary. But anyways, a week after that, I was called into the office by the sheriff. He informed me that he felt that I was delusional because he'd been searching on the internet and found some things where people were delusional that you could almost imagine that they were struck when somebody they didn't have to get along with got near them. He put me on paid leave for a couple months, and he said I needed a forensic psychological examination because of my delusions. I didn't argue with him. I knew it was a bunch of bunk. It was garbage. I'll do whatever you got to do. Get me back to work. I went through everything. I was found fit for duty. Asked him to come back to work. And he said, "Oh yeah, we'll get you to go back to work. This has got to happen. This has got to happen. We'll see you on this day." That day came, and I never heard from anybody. I called him. He said, "Well, let's give me some time. The legislature has to approve some funding for it." So I waited and waited. And the next phone call I got was from my attorney that said I was going to be arrested and charged for 2 counts of offering a false instrument for filing. And I was charged with it. I was arrested with it. I'm an investigator, 14 years at that time with the Sheriff's Department with 25,000 people county. And an investigator gets arrested for filing false information, which is what I refused to do to begin with. They're charging me with that. So now I got the machine against me. The good old boys and the machine of the law, which who polices the police? I certainly wasn't able to do that. I was trying to do that from inside, and I went forward with it. Obviously was not going to take any plea deals. I wasn't going to bargain anything away because they were wrong. I had documentation. I had witnesses. One witness said that the striker that hit me was, he didn't think it would cause injury, but it was definitely meant to shut me up. He wrote that in a statement. The DA and the ADA said, well, it was more like a collegiate pat on the back. I'm like, you know, it's still touching me without permission. You have no reason to touch a subordinate, male, female, whatever. So anyways, I got arrested. The time came for the trial. The day of the trial, I was informed that the judge, the local criminal judge, had forgotten to call a jury, and that put me against the wall. It said, you can either have trial now, wait 2 months, or you can sign this paper and go back to work as a road deputy, which would be 2 levels below what I was. I had made it clear that I wanted to go back as a sergeant, which I was before as a road sergeant. And, oh yeah, that's great, we'll go back to road sergeant. Well, no, the paperwork was typed up the day before the trial, had the dates on it the day before the trial. The trial comes, I'm expecting a jury. I've got my former lieutenant who's retired. I've got 2 other investigators that are going to testify on my behalf. One of them actually left the office, like her friend there, or the friend of her brother, left the office and after 30 years of service, went to the road to get away from this guy. There's so many clues there, and so many times that this was brought up. He was actually threatened, which I have on an audio tape, was played for the DA and the sheriff, that is threatening, well, I'm not going to say the words, but if you effing do that again, go to the sheriff, you're going to have trouble. I got that on audio tape. It was played for the sheriff and the former DA. They have knowledge of it, and they did nothing. They did absolutely nothing for him. They did nothing for me. I had enough of it. I wanted to get back to work. My daughter needed knee surgery. I didn't have, you know, it sounds like a thing you hear on TV. My family needs a spleen. You know, I need knee surgery, but my family needed medical health care. I needed to have a job to work. I was unemployed. I'd been working with a Mennonite doing construction, but I needed to get back. So I got back, and that was in 2007. Here it is, 2011. I still work at the same place. I still have to go to the same place to work. I smell the same smells. I see the same people. I am under the pressure of the same types of activity. There was condoms placed in my police car, not mine. They were thrown there. We have cars keyed alike. I searched my car after a suspect's been in there. There was nothing in there. Now I find this stuff in there. I got a written counseling for being 1 minute late to work. 1 minute late for us is we step out of our house and get in our car and call on the air. That's how I go to work. I'm at work when I leave my door. I was 1 minute late. I was called because of being untruthful. They said I was untruthful. It was unfounded. I became politically active. I ran against the sheriff in the first race. You know, 100 votes to 3,000, something like that. It was kind of a funny thing, but it was more of a statement. But basically, I got mad. I got very mad. Not mad where I would take it out in anger, but I got mad because I want to fight. I want to fight for these people. I want to fight for the cause that these guys, these ladies have taken on. I want to fight for the cause of these folks. And for you guys to stand here, I appreciate this. You have a duty ahead of you, and I don't mean to preach to the choir. I want to read something from way back a long time ago that might be familiar. We the people of the United States, to ensure domestic tranquility, establish justice. When is it when a police officer can go through that? Now, I don't deserve special status because I'm a cop, but when that can happen in the police department, what can happen outside of it? We see what happens outside of it. I was lucky. I was spared from having to do that. I came very close. Very close. But the Lord had something else in mind for me. I had my wife. I had my 4 children. They're going through a living nightmare because of the mental and physical torture I endure every day now going to work. I miss work because I can't bear it. I just can't bear it, but I go, and I do my job, and I do a good one. I don't mean to monopolize the time. I'll give it up now, but please, I thank you for this. Spread the word, and again, please help us to support this bill. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Ken. I want to remind everyone that in addition to this press conference, there's going to be a town hall meeting in room 711A in the LOB at 5:30 today. And that will leave a little bit more time and be more open-ended. And if you want to come back, or maybe based on having attended this meeting, you may want to recommend to someone else, you know, that they might want to attend. Everyone is welcome to attend that meeting later in the day. Is anyone standing up here want to say any more words at this point?
Maybe a question.
Anybody have any questions?
We'll do questions.
Excellent. That's a good presentation.
Can you explain the bill, please?
Essentially what the bill does is it establishes that it is a violation of the labor law for an employer to allow a hostile workplace or an abusive workplace. The law defines what an abusive workplace is. The law defines what a violation of the abusive workplace statute is. It also allows for a private right of action for an employee who has notified their employer that this abusive behavior exists. Title VII of the Equal Employment Opportunity Act provides special class status for certain violations, things like race, creed, color, gender, sexual orientation. So we already know that it is a violation of the law to harass someone pursuant to those particular categories because they are immutable. But what it doesn't do, it doesn't protect employees who are the victims of bullying. Bullying that has been described by people here, by their superiors, by their supervisors. It could be verbal bullying. It could be physical bullying. We've heard examples of both. It could be bullying that can be best described by preventing someone from moving forward in their workplace or in their career, destroying their work product, sabotaging their efforts every day, making them look like a bad employee. So what this legislation does is it establishes that it will not be the law of the state of New York for employers to allow this to happen. It's both public employers and private employers. That all employers have an obligation to have a safe workplace. It's in their interest as well, because employees who are the victims of bullying are also not the most productive employees, as we've heard. So employers will be responsible for establishing that it will not be accepted in their workplace. They will then establish procedures so that employees can notify them when this happens. They have an obligation to do something about it, and if they don't do something about it, they can be sued and they will pay a fine. That's essentially what the bill does.
The only thing that I would add is that employers who respond affirmatively to set things right in the workplace are protected. And I think that's an important feature.
Right. Well, we have, it also prevents against retaliation. It provides for remedies and enforcement. And again, we want employers to be participants in this process. It's in their interest as well. Any other questions?
What's the S number and the A number?
The S number is S4289, and the A number is 4258.